Start over again. Our chair, Sheila Sullivan Ofini, is not here today due to a last minute emergency. So I am filling in for her, Cindy Mahalo, the vice chair. So I'll take roll. Janet Kravanis here. Joe Pinto. Not here. Dane.
Here.
And Sheila is not here. Okay, so let's just have a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance. Do we usually stand up for the moment of silence? Okay. Okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Steve, I see that you just came in. Sheila was unexpectedly taken to the emergency room this afternoon. Yep, okay, good, so you know. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is to consider approving the agenda. Would anybody like to move?
Motion.
Thank you, Dane. Okay. Second, thank you, Janet. Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Okay, next item, the minutes. Consider approving the minutes from the March 16th meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion. Yeah.
Thank you, Dane. A second? Thank you, Janet. Did you have
It's
any?
not on your agenda, but you should open them before you're okay with having done the minutes, but before you go any further after that, you need to really allow for public comment. I don't know why it's not on here, but
Okay,
you should allow for public comment in case somebody wants to comment on a specific item on your agenda.
thank you, Steve. Great. Okay, so did we vote on the minutes? I think we did.
I thought you did. I thought you had voted on the minutes. That's why I stopped you before you
Okay.
went any further. But if you didn't, I apologize. That was my fault.
Great. So, I see we have 3 people. Just 3 more than usual. So does anyone have public comment about any of the many items that are on our agenda today? Okay, great. Thank you. We'll start with that. We'll move on to item number 6, which is we are fortunate tonight to have a presentation from a guest speaker. Linda, do you want to introduce her, Janet? You can just read what's here.
Yes, tonight we have Linda Coulston, is that correct? Yes, from Transition Town Media. Biodiversity Group's presentation on the harmful effect of mosquito sprays and drifts on biodiversity, plants and wildlife habitat. And then a discussion and possible action on the EAC's helpful alternatives that residents can use to control mosquitoes. So we welcome you, Linda, and look forward to your presentation.
And
thank you for inviting me this evening. I hope to have some informative information and some ideas that you can share among the residents of Newtown Township. So just very briefly, before I get started, I have a story I kind of like to tell you. It has a lot to do with my love of the environment, and I didn't know it at the time. When we were small children, my father used to read us a story. It's called A Day in Fairyland, and it's a huge book. It was a story about the elves who were very mischievous and the fairies who were preparing a birthday party for the Fairy Queen that evening. And it talks about all the things that they get into. But the bottom line of the story is that they do have a birthday party, and there was singing and candles and everything on the Fairy Queen's birthday cake. Well, one evening on the way home from my grandparents' house, after dinner, my father stopped by a woodland that wasn't too far from where we lived. And rolled down the windows in the car. My sister and brother and I listened for the song of the fairies. And of course, we could hear a lot of crickets and everything. But then we could see the lights from the Fairy Queen's birthday glittering through the forest leaves. And of course, it was the fireflies. So I remember that, although I was probably 7 or 8 years old, I still remember that story, and I've always loved the insects. So anyway, that's my story. And maybe many of you can identify with seeing fireflies. So I think I left printouts for each person, but one of the things that's happening, monarchs are red listed, but they've not been identified as threatened species or endangered species by the federal government. And some of that has to do with restriction of pesticides, because once they're put on the endangered species list, then pesticides will be more restricted. And they're just the canary in the coal mine, as we all know.
Did you say they have or they have not been?
They have not, they're red listed internationally, but they're not listed on the, in this country of endangered species.
And you're speculating that that may be because
Of
that
the-
there would be restrictions on pesticides and the
Pesticide,
manufacturers might not
yeah,
want that.
yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to jump in here and I'm sorry, I should have said this sooner. Part of the reason we think your presentation today is so important is that it aligns with some of the strategies and objectives that we have in Newtown Township.
Yep.
We passed a couple years ago, the Board of Supervisors passed a native plant resolution endorsing the use of 80% native plants on township-owned properties and encouraging 20% native plants on half of privately owned properties because they realize the importance of native plants to the biodiversity and to the health of our community, and the health of the insects and the pollinators are an integral part of that. It also is an integral part of the township status as a bird town. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Bird town community, and our other work to promote pollinators, like through our rain gardens, which are 100% native plants. So that's part of why we think it's so important to hear what you have to say today.
Okay. And what the point that I'm making is if people are spraying insecticides, then the pollinator gardens are pointless because you're killing all of the pollinators that are coming to those gardens if there's drift. So anyway, 70% of the world's biomass of insects have disappeared over the last 25 or 30 years. And I think that's alarming. Along with the insects, and we talked about that earlier privately, is that baby bird hatchlings need soft-bodied insects. They can't eat seeds. Many people think if they put out bird seed that the birds will survive, but that's untrue because just like human babies, they need very soft food before they fledge. And if mosquito predators, which are prevalent with dragonflies and so on, if they're eliminated, then there will probably be, I'm guessing, an explosion of mosquitoes because the insecticides are only about 10% effective on mosquitoes anymore. They're becoming immune. I have seen it and I cannot find it again, that mosquitoes are becoming, and it was through the EPA, mosquitoes are becoming immune to the insecticides. Just like some of the plants, the genetically modified plants and the sprays that they put down, some of those weeds are becoming resistant. How do sprays work? They actually kill that small amount of mosquitoes, but they kill katydids. The runoff kills fish and salamanders and frogs. So there's been a disappearance of the salamanders. And they can be neurotoxic to small children and pets, especially cats. And they track them in the house. So if they spray the lawn and everything, the children can also track that in the house. Things that I might recommend, and companies should maybe be asking the public, do they do a survey of the homeowner's property to find out if they really have a mosquito problem? Or do they just spray because the people are afraid of having mosquitoes on their property? If not, then how do they know what insects to target? So I think these are things that we could pose to the public. Do they provide other alternatives such as less harmful chemicals to the environment, or do they only target the insects the homeowner would like to eradicate? So what are they targeting? Is it just everything globally, or are they targeting specific things like ticks or mosquitoes? And do they state the side effects to the homeowners of the neurotoxic effects on children or pets? It's my understanding, although this is just hearsay from friends, that often that have sprayed, they don't say too much about whether they kill fish or anything. They're just talking about the target insects. And then what can we do? We can, there are a few laws regulating mosquito sprays, and especially in Pennsylvania. So I would suggest that maybe the mosquito spray companies obtain a permit in Newtown Township if they haven't already, so that we know what they're spraying and where they're going to be spraying. Require neighborhood notification of intention to spray. That allows others to cover up their plants so that they're not being polluted by the drift. And uphold laws that the breeze must be less than 5 to 9 miles per hour, and that's written in that's law in Pennsylvania. That it's mainly meant for farming, and very little has been done in suburbia without with regulations. But the drift regulations are 5 to 9 miles an hour or less. Consider township regulations that spraying cannot take place within a certain number of feet of property lines. So would that require that the township have people who are going to spray and contract sprayers survey their properties so that they aren't misstepping onto other people's property? There have been numerous complaints. We've set up tables at different venues, and people come up and saying, well, they sprayed my property and they weren't supposed to. They sprayed over the edge of the fences. So I think that's something that we need to be more aware of. Breaking news, as of yesterday, the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, representing a media resident, just won a significant lawsuit against the mosquito spray company for the drift. So according to the attorney from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and corresponding with the resident that sued, it sets a precedence, and I understand it. He said it was a significant accomplishment that has taken place. Moving forward, so what can we do? Provide a web page. You may already be doing that, but a web page and handouts available to public at different events to teach. I brought a couple of little things that I sent. These are reusable bags. These are something that children would like, and maybe talk about recycling as well as preservation of invertebrates and birds. Educate township residents that standing water is a mosquito breeding ground, even something like a bottle cap. I've talked to a couple of mosquito spray companies, well, actually landscapers, not the spraying companies themselves, and suggested what might seem to be a wacky idea. But if anyone has rain gutters, they're breeding mosquitoes. And if someone was inventive enough to have a drone that would take pictures of that homeowner's gutter and show them where the water is, and then have another drone with a payload and drop mosquito dunks into it, you could stop the mosquitoes from breeding, and you wouldn't need to spray properties. Now, I understand that people want to spray for ticks and things. That is a problem, and I'm not sure what the remedy is for that. Keep rain gutters cleaned out. Make traps by using buckets and putting mosquito dunks in them. Maybe provide some funding for mosquito traps for the public at a nominal fee, or maybe free at some events. The buckets don't need to be that large, and the mosquito dunks run about $1 a piece. Maybe wholesale, they're a little less expensive. And join a coalition of townships to support and have a pollinator pledge. And we're talking about a coalition of townships to try to get legislation passed. There is someone from Beyond Pesticides that's willing to work with townships if we can get a coalition together. He's been very successful writing legislation for other states and communities. That's all I have to say. Does anyone have any? Oh, I did want to end my talk with if we enjoy sitting on our back patio on a cool evening with our children and maybe our grandchildren and watching the fireflies or birthday candles on the Fairy Queen's birthday cake, then we need to regulate pesticides.
Thank you, Linda. I do have a couple questions. Can you tell us again, what organization you're with in media and your role and the group and what they do
Sure.
in that town?
Sure. I'm personally chair of Bee City, Media Bee City. Organization was, the charter was adopted by the borough council last year, I believe in May. We had to put in a pollinator garden, and there's certain things we have to do to abide by that resolution. It's a very hybrid type of a situation because I'm aligned with, our organization is aligned with Transition Town Media or Greater Media Area and the Borough EAC. So it's sort of, it's supported by all those groups. So we all work together to accomplish our goals. So there is myself and my chair, and there are a couple of committee people who volunteer to do things. But with the, with Transition Town and all the people there, it makes the load lighter. So we've done all kinds of exhibits at different venues. We set up things. We've worked with Julie and Lisa at Redbud Native Plant Nursery, and they've lent us plants so that we can exhibit what kinds of things the pollinators need. So we've set that up.
And you talked a lot about why homeowners would engage a spray company, which would be to reduce mosquitoes and ticks and things
Maybe
like
ticks,
that.
yeah.
But I think we also need to connect the dots that spraying, I'm assuming, can harm pollinators, including honeybees and native bees.
Yes.
So to do that would be counterproductive
Yeah.
to all the points of the pollinator garden.
And I might say too, that the cost of putting a few buckets around with $1 or $2 per month for each bucket certainly outweighs the cost of $300 or $400 to have your yard sprayed 3 or 4 times a year. So it's a lot less expensive. It's a lot safer. Children, if they get into that bucket, I recommend putting a little chicken wire screening on the top to keep birds and things from falling in. But if children get into that bucket and they play in the water and they lick their hands, or the dogs or the foxes or anything else were to get into that bucket, it's not harmful. It actually doesn't even harm dragonfly larvae. It only kills, it's only lethal to the mosquito larva.
Thank you.
And
Any other?
Linda, explain how the bucket works, because I know we don't need a special bucket, but it's what you put in the bucket to start with
Sure.
that helps to attract.
So this is my messy bucket. It has some leaves in it. And you put water in because the leaves make it smell nice for mosquitoes. They happen to like that sort of foul smell. And then you can put one packet. There are 2 different companies that have, it's called Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a ubiquitous bacterium in the environment, and bacteria is not only a few of them are very bad, these are beneficial. You put one of these in the bucket with the water halfway or 3/4 of the way up, and allow it to just sit and ferment. And that'll attract mosquitoes, depending on the size of your property. If you have a small property like you would over at why am I thinking? Ellis, thank you. If you have a small property that's not much bigger than the size of this room, 1 bucket would probably do. We have an acre at our home, and 3 or 4 buckets placed around will probably be a better idea. And honestly, they don't have to be any bigger than a small 1 gallon bucket.
Yes.
You
And
could
we have to be
cut the top off of a plastic milk jug.
I was just thinking that. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we'll take a look at your information later. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 7, land development review. 7.1, we have discussion and possible action on Aronimink Phase 2 review letter. And Steve, I'm hoping that at each point along the way here, you can guide us and remind us as to where we are in the review process and what the next action step is. So if we were to have comments on this letter, what would be what possible courses of action are available to us?
So the planning commission meeting is not until next Thursday. So if you walk away tonight with a recommendation coming from the letter, let's say you have comments that you want to make. They could go before the planning commission next Thursday. I'm not exactly sure when the intent of when the plan will be on the board of supervisors. I'm guessing it would not be the 10th. I'm guessing it would be the second meeting in May, but that would be that's where I think we're headed. So if you miss this coming Thursday, for sure, you would want to get it done probably before your next meeting, just to make sure it was before the board of supervisors.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Did anybody have any questions or thoughts about the letter from Pannoni? That was from the township engineer, right?
The second review letter was from the township.
I did read through it and it looks like there's a lot of things they're still waiting on.
Well, that was
Which is pretty common, and then they'll usually respond back. And we get a response letter, usually saying, yeah, we'll abide by this, or we won't abide by that, or we're asking a variance or whatever.
Yes.
But those are I think the key would be for you, if there's a particular item that you think is important that the planning commission should pay attention to, or that the board of supervisors should pay attention to, that's what you should bring up. Like if you want to bring attention to something that's in the letter, I guess that's my point.
And that might be something that we haven't already brought to their attention in our first letter.
Yeah, I mean, if it was in your first letter, I don't think you need to add another one, is my point. Yeah.
We've been
But
writing a lot
if
of these
it's
letters lately.
if it's something in addition to if there's something new in this letter that you wish to make comment to, that's what I would do.
Yeah, the only thing I took note of was that the applicant said they're still looking for their steep slopes records to see what's man-made versus not
Yeah,
man-made.
my understanding this week is that they did some borings and that they're having to relook at that whole situation. So my guess is the plan is going to change again.
Okay.
So,
And a
Okay.
boring, can you explain what that is?
yeah,
Drilling
typically when you're going to make a plan to do something, either that you're putting in the stormwater basin, or if you're even putting in a foundation, you'll do some borings. Depending on what you're doing might determine the size of the boring, but usually it's like a 4 to 6 inch hole
Okay.
that you drill down and you say, what am I hitting? What's below here? What am I impacting going in? Because it determines what the soils are like.
Right.
And they want to see what that is. And so my understanding is that the borings have not come back favorably. And so they're taking a look at a potential change based on that. But that's not been confirmed to me. I just heard that is a possibility this week.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. That's good to know. And the only other thing I noticed kind of aligned with what Sheila said, which is in the stormwater section, there seemed to be some significant details that were missing, not just procedural things. I didn't make a specific note of it, but that was my impression. So, well, it sounds like we have time that if anyone sees something in that letter that they want to respond to, we could, we still have time to get something to the planning commission.
Well, just remember, I don't know that they're not going to be before the planning commission.
Beg your pardon?
I'm not saying they're not going to be before the planning commission. I just think that it may be that location, that they may be having a slight change on something based on their borings.
Okay, but you said that the planning commission is going to be looking at this next week.
Yes,
And that if we wanted to get a letter to them, we would have to.
but
get
you
it-
need, yeah, so if,
We would have to get it to them by noon tomorrow.
no, so let's say that you want to make a recommendation that the planning commission pay special attention to a particular item, you would need to decide that tonight so that your board can vote on, that you can vote on it, because you can't
Okay.
individually take and go do something. You have to act as a whole board.
I
That's my
didn't see
point.
anything that warranted a new letter.
Okay, that was my point.
And I thought your first letter really addressed the issues that
Yeah.
we needed to.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 7.2, discussion and possible action on the Veterans Memorial, the Marville revisions. There were quite a number of documents there. I did take note of a few things from the CDC engineering letter from March 30th. I noticed on item number 4, I don't know if you can pull this up, Steve. That's the CDC engineering letter dated March 30th. Item number 4 said that they were viewing this as a lifestyle village. It seemed that could either be zoned as a commercial, development or a lifestyle village, and they were opting to make it a lifestyle village, and that they talked about the design of this one building that would be harmonious with the design of the rest of the development. But given that none of the rest of the development exists, this is phase 1 of phase 2. I don't know how they can say that it's going to align with the design of the building unless they are considering that the first 2, the Veterans Memorial and then that other space rocket shaped thing are the design. I think, to me, there's so many questions that are unanswered with this. I don't know if anyone else had a chance to read it, and I thought that was kind of odd. And then number 5, it's item number 5, the parking spaces. It said that there were 8 required, but 37 provided. And when I looked at the plans for the entire area, it seems like there was an extraordinary number of parking spaces envisioned for this overall development in the subsequent phases. And it was disheartening to see that number of parking spaces, especially, and more office buildings being built when we have so many vacant office buildings now. You've told me there's 2 across from Media Bean Company that have been vacant for 8 years. There are vacancies throughout Campus Boulevard. Most of those office buildings there are vacant. You have more office buildings being built right now next to Mainline Health.
Yeah.
Huge office buildings. And I just wonder, why do we need so many office buildings? And would the township revisit its parking space formula to adjust to the new reality that many office buildings will never be as full as they were post-COVID? I think office occupancies are down across the country, and that has immense environmental impact, all that impervious surface, and that development there is bounded by Crum Creek. And I think it said there's going to be like 16,000 feet of impervious surface there. And why do they need 37 parking spaces if only 8 are required? Or why are they going to put in? And couldn't they just, and this is supposed to be, a lifestyle village is supposed to be pedestrian friendly and is supposed to have sidewalks. And if it's pedestrian friendly, then I would think people could just walk across Alice Grim Boulevard and park at all those other empty parking spaces that are right across the road. Those were my thoughts. Oh, and in the plants, it did not mention any use of, it didn't specify that they would use native plants. It talked about the required number of shrubs and trees and evergreens. And there was a lighting plan, but it didn't say anything about being bird friendly and have downward casting light.
So when do you expect this to come before the planning committee or The supervisors
This is on the agenda for next Thursday night.
next.
And isn't the applicant requesting preliminary final?
They
Like
will be
they want to
requesting,
get it all done in one vote?
well, they are requesting preliminary final. I don't know that they are anticipating it would all get done next Thursday night. But that's preliminary final doesn't necessarily mean it all happens in one night. Preliminary final means that the plan that they are presenting is beyond just the concept. It's enough to go all the way to final. It's full land development. Sometimes some organizations will come in and they'll do a preliminary just to get the sense of the community's thoughts. And they don't necessarily take it to all the detail. This particular plan, they want to take it, and if we were to approve it, and when I'm saying we, if the Board of Supervisors were to approve it, I think they would hope to be building rather soon. I mean, that's their goal for this particular building, what they're wanting to accomplish. I think your comments specifically related to the fact that the parking is more than what's required. I think that's that's a good statement to make. I think I know why they want more than what's required, because they're trying to also park for the Veterans Memorial itself when people show up for that event and things like that. But I think, again, I think it's appropriate to speak to that, the fact that the plan shows future growth without asking for definition, and your comment related to, we want to build it so it looks like what else is there, and we don't know what else is going to be there, is another really good comment in relationship to that. I don't know if it falls under EAC or not, but I think for sure when you talk about the parking spaces, one of the things that we've been doing with developers is saying, if you're willing not, and particularly if they're going to still own the property, we've been doing this. If you're willing, design for parking spaces, don't necessarily build parking spaces. In other words, leave that as open green space, or, it may be, I say open green space, may not be our definition that you're wanting in regards to meadow and things like that, but at least not be turning around and making it all impervious if the need is not there at this moment. And so that's the focus. And we've done that in several places here in town already, trying to cut back on some of what's there. Your argument regarding office space, if there's not a demand for office space, it'd be hard to build an office space because in order to get the funding, unless they have all the funding in-house, and most developers don't have all the funding in-house, but in order to get the funding, they have to have at least a certain percentage of occupancy kind of committed to go build that building. I think it's going to be hard pressed to build any new office space in the near future. Most everything that's being built today, I only know of one actually office next to the mainline health that's being built at this point. Everything else has already been built prior to, on their books prior to the COVID. So I think that personally, I'll be very surprised if office space is what comes back, because I think the need for office space is very low. But 10 years from now, that may be a different story, and who knows how quickly they plan on doing this. And so
Okay, thank you.
I will tell you the argument that you're making, commercial versus whether it's lifestyle, that's the township's argument as well. We have already said, you're wanting to do this lifestyle, but we don't see a whole plan. What we see is one building, and it's one building, it would need to be commercial. That's the reason why the setback issue comes into play.
I noticed that too, because if it's a commercial building, it's what, 150 foot setback? It's significantly more.
It's significantly more.
Whereas the lifestyle, they can be 20 feet from the sidewalk.
Yes.
Do you know, this is supposedly the Delaware County Memorial Veterans Meeting Hall. Do the veterans want a meeting hall?
Yes.
Do they need a meeting hall?
Well, I mean, I guess
I don't know what other facilities there are available for veterans in Delaware County, like
I mean,
VFW halls or things like that.
there are, I mean, I think that this is something they want to do. I don't think we would deny them. I don't, in other words, I don't think our denial is based on whether that there's a need or a want for this. I think they think there's a need. I think that veterans have come to them and said they would like that to be near the Veterans Memorial. I know that this has been being talked about literally for years. When I say this, I think this conversation that I'm having with this right now probably went back at least 6 years that I recall this discussion. So I think this has been in the works for a very long time.
Okay. Yeah, I was just looking to see who the impetus is coming from, if the veterans have been asking for this.
I don't know if the veterans have been asking. I know it's been offered to them. They are interested. The developer is very pro-veteran and wants to do this as a gift to the veterans. And of course, I think the veterans have said that's a lovely gift to have. So the answer, I guess the answer is I'm not so worried about the use. I'm more worried about how it's being developed for the whole property.
Is there, I'm just trying to envision, the building seems very small. It's like 1,000 square feet.
I think it's 1,800 square feet.
1,800 square feet. Like, I'm trying to figure out how big is this room?
It's so give you an idea of an 1,800 square foot house. You know, if you think about an 1,800 square foot house, it's usually what would be considered a small ranch, probably in that line. This is a 2-story building in that there's going to be an underground space for storage for a variety of things. And the way it sits on that piece of property at that location, I think it's going to look on one side, it's going to look bigger than it will on the other side.
So it's 1,800 square feet, both floors?
No, I believe it's just one,
Main floor.
the main floor. I think it's 1,800 usable square feet is what I heard. It may be 1,700
And is
something.
it the type of place that would like to have restrooms and a kitchen?
There
or-
will be
like that?
restrooms. There will be, my understanding is it's not a full-fledged kitchen like you would experience, like, you know, going to like a true full functioning kitchen, but what would be more like a,
Microwave.
well, probably a little bit, you know, there might even be something that
Sink
can,
or a refrigerator.
yeah,
or
it's,
something.
but it's not supposed to be a full-fledged industrial kitchen.
Okay, and then the reason I ask about the restrooms is that on one of the plans, it said that the current septic field or whatever would be decommissioned.
Yes.
So I was surprised that there's already a septic field there.
So the septic field that's there meets the needs of the business park that's below it. I mean, so the septic fields take care of the business park that's below.
That exists there.
It
already.
exists there right now.
So how can they decommission? A septic
Because of
field that's
all
actually-
the new, because as you and I know, living in Hunter's Run, we have new
Got
sewer.
it.
And that same project actually put new sewer in that location.
Okay. And then it said some of the buildings there would be torn down. I didn't even know there were buildings back there. It said that there were existing buildings and trees that showed on the plan that they.
I think there's some, I think there, because of it being a septic location, I think there's
Oh,
pumping up
like a
to that
little pump.
location. And it's, I think it's like a small
Okay.
pump house kind of thing.
Okay, great.
The trees, that's a different story, but I mean,
Yeah, well, we're gonna leave the trees to the shade tree mission. So then it sounds like there's possibly 4 things that we could comment on if we wanted to submit a comment letter. So if people are interested, I could put forth a proposal.
Please.
Okay, so I move that the EAC draft a comment letter that would address 4 points. Well, you said that we shouldn't talk about the lifestyle village because that's out of our lane, Steve.
well, I'm not saying you shouldn't say something about
Okay.
it if you want to, just know that I think the township's position coming from Andy
Okay,
is that, and I think that's also coming from the engineer, is either it is a lifestyle village or it's a commercial. This property right now is not showing a full life. It's not showing a full lifestyle village. It's actually showing more as just a single building. And I think if you can comment on that.
okay,
I just think that the main comment's going to come from the
Yeah.
township.
okay. So first, we would make a comment to the effect that it does not appear to be a full lifestyle village. Just kind of raising that. Second item would be questioning the need for the additional parking lots, parking spaces, which are beyond what was required. The third item would be requesting that native plants be used in accordance with the township's native plant resolution. And the fourth item being requesting that they have a lighting plan that shows that the lights are bird friendly.
Can you please come up
You
to
have
the
to
mic
come up and
so
identify
we have
yourself.
people that can hear it? And just for the record, because you're speaking again, just who you are, so.
Yeah, Linda Coulston, actually Middletown Township, Pennsylvania. But being part of all the surrounding communities and interested birds, is there anything in any of the building codes that have glass that prevents bird strikes? Or solar to reduce? the
Not
cost?
yet,
Okay,
not yet.
that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, so that, thank you, Linda, that was the motion. And I guess I moved, so we need. That works, Steve?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. We'll have a vote. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Good. Okay, ready to move on to 7.3 Stoney Knoll. Okay, here, discussion and possible action on the Stoney Knoll development. I think this is the second or third time we've looked at this. The EAC and Planning Commission are awaiting a new wetland study from the developer. Steve, I just have a question. I know Rose sent over a number of documents to us as she received them, informing us to review them, but not respond. Is it possible when she sends those over to like explain what you just said about what the next step is, where it is in the process, that the
Sometimes that's, sometimes that's really hard, because when she sends the document over, we may be at one step and then it's going to change 3 times between the time we get there. Yeah, I mean, we can try to have some kind of review that may go out at some point. I don't know, it can be with each document, but maybe it can be before the meeting, that just so that you would know which ones are going. I mean, like, for example, the Aronimink, I thought was going to be on the agenda for Thursday night, and I've just been told that it may not be, but I don't know that that's true yet. So that's next Thursday. Yeah.
okay,
Tonight's zoning. I'm having a moment, but
okay,
but so, I mean, I can try to get something that we can give an idea of where we are in the process. The problem is it's changing literally sometimes by the day. And so it's hard for us to, we know what's supposed to be going where,
Right.
but it,
well, and then not only that, but just, you know, when you get this random document, you think, okay, some of these things have been changing and we were waiting for this, or now we got that, and you just kind of have to try to remember where you are in the process.
that's one of the challenges even I'm having with all of, particularly this particular project. Because we've actually had I mean, this is the third version, and now this, in the third version, I think this is the
And all the,
second's the middle, so,
yeah, and then all the responses
yes,
aren't always keeping up with the latest version.
yeah. Yes,
Okay.
that's agreed.
And the
Okay.
trees are still an issue in this one.
Trees are still an issue. So, if I can take the lead again, there was a Stantec letter. I don't know if you can bring it up, Steve. It was the one, it was the letter from Stantec. They had a couple documents, not the ENS report. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But under this saldo number 8, this was the item about the recreation fee in lieu of fee
Mhm.
of $65,000 because they did not want to provide the 18,000 square feet of recreation fee or open space. Am I getting that right? number 8. So if they opt for that, and if the supervisors grant that, where does that $65,000 go, and how would it be spent by the board?
So typically that goes into the open space fund, which we have an open space fund that developers can contribute to. It either goes to the development of a park that we're working on. So it might be money that would be spent, say, at the Meadow Preserve. Or it potentially could be used if there was an opportunity to purchase open space, that the board would purchase open space.
How much is in that fund right now?
$20,000 maybe?
Not
It
gonna,
did-
I'm not gonna buy much. with it.
No, it's not. So the other part of that is there's also there's a window of time in which the township really should be acting on spending the money. The idea is not for the township to get the money and accumulate money over a period of time. I think typically we try to spend it within 3 years. So most of the monies that we've received in fee of lieu of had been spent on improving parkland or open space areas specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Some of it has been used. We have, like when we purchased the fire, when we purchased the corner of Sawmill that was from the fire company, we used a good bit of the money at that time.
Okay, the next item that caught my eye was number 11, which is this waiver request for the cul-de-sac length, which the code limits cul-de-sacs to 700 feet. And they're asking for a length of 1,625 feet, so more than double. And I know they had requested that last June as a waiver, and it had been granted, but now their plan has changed, so they have to request that waiver again. So it's can't be assumed, they have to request that. And as part of that, having that waiver, they are having to widen the road from like 20 something
Or
feet, to
20,
30,
feet, I think.
yeah, from almost double it to make space for fire trucks and parking. So it just seems to me that now that puts them in the developer in the position of coming back to us and asking for a waiver. And that we can ask for things in return. Because that's not a done deal, right? The waiver has not been granted on this.
The waiver's not been granted on this. I think what you're asking, I guess before I answer that, I guess what we ask in return may be limited, but you can, okay,
Well,
you know,
there's negotiation. Then.
certain negotiation can potentially be illegal, so I just want to be
Okay,
careful.
well,
That's
why we have you here.
That's why we have Rich sit here when we do these,
Okay.
but I'm just saying, so we'll want to be careful.
Number 30 or number 23 is the easement or right of way to be provided for a riparian buffer. It noted that there would be a 50-foot easement for that, which is what the code calls for. How is that recorded, and how does that travel with the property when it's sold and passed on? Is that in perpetuity?
So it would, if I'm looking at it real quick here before I answer the question. So
The reason I
Yes.
asked that,
so once it's established, yeah, it'll be attached to the deed. So then, yes, it would go on with the property for whomever owns the property.
okay. And if you look at the plan, you can see that this lot 18 would be very tight. They're hoping that the wetlands delineation comes back, not at all different from what it was 40 years ago. And then immediately adjacent to that is the detention basin, which is immediately adjacent to the home. So when this person, if someone buys this and develops this, I would think that there is the possibility that changes will happen by the homeowner to the wetlands over time.
Well,
And how, who safeguards that? Who watches that to make sure that that wetlands is
so
preserved?
the
is
same
not
way
touched?
anything is watched today. So we have wetlands on lots of people's properties today, right? I mean, throughout the whole township. And our guidelines are, you know, our rules are what our rules are. And, you know, you can't develop in the wetlands and, you know, do homeowners enter into the wetlands and do activity? I'm going to tell you probably yes. You know, I mean, and if I said no, you would probably be able to tell me somebody who had, right? I mean, so just like somebody does certain things on their land for other things over an easement, we have easements that for shorelines, and do people sometimes go in and put plantings on top or do those kind of things, even though the township or the SORC, you know, has said that they shouldn't? Happens all the time. It does, when we become aware of it, we address it. You know, the fact that it's a wetlands piece that's tied on your property, hopefully when you read the deed, you understand that there's certain responsibilities for protecting wetlands and those kind of things. But do people necessarily do it? You know,
Okay.
some people are really great at following those guidelines, and other
Yeah.
people are not so great.
So it's not only the homeowner, what they do or don't do, but the fact that it is an easement or right of way gives the township certain,
Sure, because
which you're in a position of like protecting it.
we can protect
monitoring
it based on when we know, if we know something's going to happen or has happened.
Yeah.
We can go in and stop it. You know, I mean, normally we're in the position of having to stop something on an after basis versus being proactive and keeping something from happening. But I mean, that's something that we could do as an EAC, is be more proactive in communicating what protections of wetlands look like. But, you know, the township does have the authority to protect it if we know something's happening.
Okay. Okay, and number 37, the wetlands delineation, which we requested, and the applicant said that they are going to get one. I'm assuming because they said it will be from a qualified professional,
Mhm.
someone qualified, but it didn't specify like a certified wetlands specialist. My question here is, what if that specialist comes back and says, this is not a wetlands, it is a stream? Because that, every time I've gone there, and I was there again today, I did not go on the property, but you can see from the street, there is flowing water.
Mhm.
There, if you ask me, there is a stream there. And if it's a stream, it's a cold water, high quality stream, and it requires 150-foot protection.
Well, I mean, obviously, if the wetlands, you know, the person who's looking at it may very well come back and say something, and then they have to abide by what's there. You know, the professional that comes in, they're signing their, you know, they should be certified. And, you know, if we are uncomfortable with whoever that is, the township always has the right to, you know, decide that we want a second look at something. If we think that the report is not valid because it's not from us, you know, somebody of that caliber. What I will tell you is Stantec's not going to put their engineering license on the line for something that's not of the right profession. But, you know, if somebody doing it, at least I don't think they will, you know, I mean, anything's possible, I guess, but I think until we get it back, I would wait to see what they come back with. And if you have a question with that, then, you know, it would be appropriate question at that time.
Okay, thank you. So those were my observations on the Stantec letter. I don't know if any of them really warrant a comment letter from us.
Have you
We
made
read
a comment letter so far?
What?
Yeah, I've had you.
Two.
Yeah. So I mean, would it be different? Is there anything different from what you've already put in your comment letters? I think would be the question.
What would you?
Well,
Put in
I
a
just
comment.
would want to be sure that whoever makes the decision about whether it's a stream or a wetland, that we can verify them.
Yeah, I think Steve just addressed that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to wait.
Yep. Okay. Okay.
Oh, but
Agreed.
then there was the issue about the trees, that they were going to cut down number, but not be able to put up the same number, 207 trees short.
And that's being handled by the township arborist.
Okay.
And I know Trish Adams of the Shade Tree has been in dialogue with them.
Right.
I feel confident that they're addressing that.
Okay, good.
Yep, she's on it. So then in the other document, which Steve, if Bradley, if you could pull that up, the erosion and sediment report. Item 1.2.2. It, I would just take exception to the wording of that. It says, that wetlands are adjacent to the site. Wetlands are not adjacent to the site. They are on the site.
Yeah,
So that's one point. And then if you look at item 1.2.1, the water shed drains to a high quality cold water fishing designated stream, which requires 150-foot buffer. And I believe the applicant provided a map, which was from a different source than what I've found in the wetlands mapper. And the map that they provided, it might be in a different document, was a color map, does not show the stream that is shown in a different map. And the stream in the map that, yeah, it's a color picture. I think that this is something that is important to point out, that the map they showed, the map they provided does not show the stream that is there, definitely there in someone else's front yard. It's on the other side of Wayland Road and Hunt Club Lane.
If the board
So,
wishes to point
yeah,
that out,
so
I think that's appropriate.
I would recommend that we provide a comment letter that provides that other map, which shows the presence of that. And then, thank
Is
you.
that map at the, with the state or more up to date than what they had, or is there something different?
It's, I don't know if it's more up to date. It's the source I always use. I think it's from the US Geological Service. It's where I always go
Yeah,
to look for.
probably worth.
And then Steve, I'm sorry, but if you could go back to the document, the erosion and sediment report, this is my last comment. 2.1.1, riparian forest buffer, stream impairment. Great, yeah, if you could just bring that up a little bit larger, I'm trying to remember what it said. And again, to me, this would come into play, right where you had it before. Up. Right there. As it says, earth disturbance may not be conducted within 150 feet of a perennial or intermittent river, stream, creek, lake, or pond that is of exceptional value or high quality watershed, which is that stream that isn't shown on their map, that is shown on the map I had seen. So to me, that would come into play depending on the findings of the wetlands delineation.
So my recommendation for you would be this, if the board, if you as a commission would want to make that statement, I would do that with also stating that you would provide the map that you're comparing it to.
Yep.
So that it's, if they choose to challenge that for some reason, that they know what they're challenging against
Yep.
versus just being an arbitrary statement. It was on a map, if
Yeah,
that makes
yeah,
sense.
no, I have a copy of
Yeah.
it. I just,
So that would be my only comment. And then the other comment that I would make is if you were able to determine from something that, make sure that it's relatively current, that you know what you're having.
Yep. okay,
But yes, if you voted to do that tonight, that would be how I would do it.
so those are all my comments. So, I move that we draft a comment letter, pointing out first that, the language in the erosion, commenting on the erosion and sediment report, 1.2.2, that wetlands are on the site, not adjacent to the site. Pointing out on 1.2.1, that depending on the findings of the wetlands delineation, there would be 150-foot buffer would be required. And that kind of ties in with 2.1. Just saying, noting that depending on the findings of the wetlands delineation, we anticipate that the land would be protected under that part of the code.
Second.
Okay. Okay, do we have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And when would this come up to, what are we
Yeah.
doing it again?
think they're on the agenda. I think they're on the agenda for next Thursday night,
Okay, so we
That's-
need this by noon tomorrow?
if possible. At least a placeholder for it.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 8, future land development review, 3111 Sawmill Lane Development Application was presented to the zoning hearing board in February, which was approved. No plans have been sent to the planning commission to date, so there's no action at this time. Item 8.2, Garrett Williamson Land Develop Application. The applicant has granted the township an extension for an indefinite period of time as the project has been put on hold while the applicant works through some issue on their end. No action at this time. Item number 9, moving on to new business. Discussion and possible action on the deer population and tick-borne diseases. I'm not sure who put this on the agenda.
I'm not sure either, but I will tell you that the chief is working with both Radnor Township and also the State Gaming Commission to look at what the procedures would be for potentially a deer call if we were going to do one.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you for that. The other thing to note is the synergistic effects here, or how things are very interrelated, is promoting native plants in lieu of invasive plants. The Japanese barberry is one of the invasive plants on the state's list. And the Japanese barberry has been known to harbor, especially, the little mice that harbor the fleas from, or the ticks from the deer, will often nest in Japanese barberry. So if you remove those invasive plants, kind of diminish a vector that tends to harbor the tick-carrying mice. Okay,
This seems like a really good thing that we could put into the newsletter. An article on this that goes out to all our residents.
about Japanese barberry
Yes, and the deer tick
connection.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, Birdtown Award, Janet.
Okay. Well, as chair of our Birdtown Committee, it's my honor and privilege to announce that the Newtown Township has earned gold certification in 2022 for our activities across 6 strategic areas: municipal actions, school district actions, community engagement, habitat enhancement, collaborations, and advocacy. That fulfill the mission of Birdtown, Pennsylvania, to work in partnership with local municipalities and like-minded organizations to promote community-based conservation actions to create a healthier, more sustainable environment for birds, wildlife, and people. So a review of our sustainable PA certification was instrumental in determining the actions that we have taken on a municipality level with resolutions passed, LD lighting, and the enhancements to our building here. A review of our community engagement and habitat enhancement activities showed that we have many elected officials, staff, businesses, committee members, and passionate residents who have come out to plant, weed, and clean our parks. In addition, we have collaborated with organizations outside of Newtown Township, such as Willistown Conservation Trust and Tyler Arboretum. In all, we have been involved in, by my calculations, looking through as much material as I can. We've been involved in 77 activities, contributing over 363 volunteer hours to make our community more sustainable. We can be proud to show our Birdtown sign and be motivated to continue our efforts for our birds, wildlife, and people, and inspire community pride. So I would like to make a brief presentation to the supervisors at their first May meeting with a couple of slides, and that just let them know that we're gold certified.
Well, congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
Good job, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Janet. I know you really have taken the lead on that and championed that.
Absolutely. It's been
Yeah.
my passion.
Yeah, thanks. That's great. Do we have is this like a photo op at this Board of Supervisors meeting?
Oh, we
Do have a
should. Yes,
sign or
please.
something?
Yes, well,
Yeah.
there'll be a slide and.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Okay,
have-
right. And then use it.
Good,
So
okay.
Joe has been helping with our committee. I'm just gonna pull him in a little
I saw
closer.
that, I saw that today. It was very neat.
Okay, good.
That's great. Wonderful. Okay, 9.3, Newtown Township Comprehensive Plan recommendations. This item is on the agenda because when the township drafted its comprehensive plan, hate to say how many years ago, 4, 5 years ago, 4? Time flies.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's closer to probably 7.
Oh,
goodness.
goodness. There is a section in there for natural resource protection. And the consultants and the stakeholders that contributed to the report or the plan pointed out opportunities for improvement, recommendations, and several of those had to do with making changes to the ordinances, strengthening protections for steep slopes, repairing buffers, wetlands. I think there was one other topic that was in there. And since that comprehensive plan was released 7 years ago, none of those things have happened. So we are raising them now to discuss how we might take a path forward on the recommendations that are on pages 49 and 50 of the natural resource protection portion of the plan. So Steve, what would be?
So what I will tell you is this, and it's been in the works for a little bit, but they're pushing it forward more now. So we were really originally looking at getting the zoning done, and we're still pushing back on that, but are working through that. And some of this would have been moved to the zoning. But because that's taking time, Rich and Andy are now working to put a draft ordinance together related to specifically riparian buffer and wetlands. And I'm hoping that they're going to be asking Monday night, my understanding, for Eric some help from Eric, the engineer, because it's going to involve some additional costs there. And then there'll be a draft that will be presented soon for those two areas. And once they get that done, I think they're going to go back and relook at the steep slope ordinance. There were some changes that had been done a while back, but to make it more in tune with what I think this was looking for. And then more of enforcement. Part of the challenge that we have is where it is in our ordinance, not so much that we don't have something, it's where it is and the enforcement is less where it is. And so some of it's going to be literally just moving some of what we have from what it kind of falls under the land development side and moving it under the zoning side. Because if it's under the zoning side, it applies to everyone. If it's in the land development side, it only applies to during a time of development. And so that's part of the challenge that we have. And so that's what they're looking at.
Got it. Thank you. So back to, you said Rich and Andy are drafting something on riparian buffers and wetlands, or just riparian buffers?
My understanding, it's both.
Yeah. 'cause the
That
two
they're
would be
working
very
on.
Closely related. I
The
think.
two are close, that's right, because the two are closely related. They're working on that. I know they met not too long ago and have kind of gotten to a point now where they need a little bit of engineering help. And that's why they're going to be asking for that on Monday night, and then hopefully wrap that up and be ready to present something. Because it will probably be moved into a zoning ordinance. It will require 2 advertisements prior to the board taking action. But I think they want to get it for you as well before the board will
Yeah.
act on it.
Yeah, no, that would be great if we could look at it. So you say that it would come to us and we'd get a chance to see it before it went to the board?
Yes.
Okay, so you expect it to come before the board like at one of their 2 main meetings? I'm just trying to get a sense of.
Well, I think what I think is
Or-
going to happen, time wise, what I think is going to happen is that Monday night, they're going to ask for engineering help. And when they ask for that, it then will be a matter of how quickly can the engineer and the biggest challenge is getting 3 people in the room that need to meet. You take the engineer who's usually pretty busy, and you take our solicitor who's usually pretty busy, and then you say you got to get them in with the staff member. The staff member is usually the easy one. Yeah, so they'll get together, they'll do what they need to do. I don't know what all needs to be left to be done, but then they would take the next step and get it back before you. It may go to the board initially just to have an initial review by the board and then come back to you for a review before it goes for them finally.
Great,
But the board has asked them to do that.
great.
And my understanding is once they get that one done, they're going to go back and look at steep slopes, which I think is also going to look a little bit at soil, the erosion piece as well. Because again, both of those, all three, I'm going to say 4, but I kind of always put wetlands and riparian buffers kind of in the same bucket. But if you look at all 4 of those individually, what I would say is those all have been handled outside of the zoning. By moving them inside the zoning, it gives it a little bit more of a bite.
Great. Okay, that is very good news to hear that they're moving ahead on that. Yeah. On item 9.4, fall 2023 tree planting. I'll give you a brief on this. Based on our successful planting at Brookside Park last fall, where we used primarily trees that were obtained through the Keystone 10 million initiative, which is funded by the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and the Arbor Foundation. And their goal is to plant 10 million trees in Pennsylvania by 2025. And they are halfway there. And we're trying to do our part because we have our goal to plant 1,000 trees. And the way this works is they have 2 distributions of trees, spring and fall. And if you want to get in on the fall act, you got to place your order by the beginning of July. So that's why I thought I brought it up now. I raised the question with George Sherritt's Director of Public Works, to ask him what the township was thinking about this. And we had kind of a preliminary brainstorming session. And had also reached out to Trish Adams and some private landowners. And the general concept is that if they offer the trees again, we would like to, George was inclined to do it. The fall trees are preferable to the spring trees because they're bigger, they're actually in dirt. And when you plant in the fall, then you have a lot less watering to do. So that's a big help. So he was on board with that. He was also on board with consolidating our order, perhaps as we did last year with the Upper Providence EAC, which had consolidated their order with Ridley Creek State Park. And the advantages to that is that the quantities of each species are like 20 or more of an individual species. So if you only want 100 trees, you're stuck with 20 of each of 5 species, which might be more than you want. So to get more diversity, that's what we did last year, and it worked out pretty well. So he is on board with that approach again. However, what we're thinking of differently this year is to focus not on township property, which we've been doing a lot of planting more recently, but for the last 5, 6, 8 years, we've been planting a lot on township property. And that creates, we're running out of space, and it creates a maintenance burden for the township. So we're thinking of focusing on private landowners, maybe some big landowners such as Garrett Williamson Foundation, houses of worship, HOAs, things like that, where the landowner might be willing to take 20, 30 trees. But they might not want there is a role where the township has signed up as a partner for the Keystone 10 million plan. And as a partner, they can be like a coordinator and a consolidator of the orders that HOAs might put in, or houses of worship, or Garrett Williamson. So that's kind of the vision, that if the township is willing to act as the coordinator, that we would focus on private property. Some of the issues are, and this is beyond my pay grade, but for shade tree maybe, is do those trees on private property count towards the 1,000 tree goal? Do they count towards MS4? I guess if they're in karst areas.
Yeah, so I mean, it would depend. I think, for example, I think Garrett Williamson is outside of that. But, you know, I guess the question would come back to, you know, is it beneficial to the community to still have trees planted there? I wouldn't say we would preclude them. I just don't think it's going to count.
Yeah. And then the whole aspect of like the definition of a street tree, and maybe this is all sorted out, but you know, if someone on Tyson Road or on Club Lane plants a tree in their front or the middle of their front or the back, then who's responsible for it? So that would just have to be all clear.
Yeah, any tree that's planted in the right of way it would kind of fit the street tree definition.
Yeah.
And the question is who's responsible? It's the property owner who owns the property in front of it, you know. So that's the responsibility question I think that you were asking.
Yeah, it would have to be clarified.
If the tree's planted in the backyard, it's outside of that. Depending on where it's planted in the front yard, it could be in the right of way or could not be. And that might mean that the tree is or isn't falling under that. Again, it depends on where the property is, whether it counts towards the 1,000 trees. Obviously, we want the trees planted closer to streams because that's what the whole purpose is for what we're after. So sometimes backyards would actually be better planting than front yards. But we also know that if we had trees that were near roadways, they help to reduce the sediment that's going into our streams as well if there's storm drains. And so there's a benefit.
Okay, yeah. And the other thing, Stephen, or George and I talked about is, because we would be giving trees to individuals and homeowners, and we have so many trees, we need to start, increasing the township's capacity for maintaining and caring for these trees. And we talked about, working with the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society to offer a tree tender training program here. We had broached this with them a year or two ago, and they were still doing it virtually due to COVID. We weren't as excited about just hosting a viewing place, but George said he really would like to start negotiations with them to have a tree tender training program right here for Newtown residents to start equipping people with the information and the skills to take care of their trees. So that's where we are. I don't know, there's been a lot of outreach, ideas raised. I've reached out to Keystone 10 Million to confirm that they are having a fall distribution. I think they've been busy with the spring distribution, which was just last week. So I think they're still crawling out from under that, but I hope to get confirmation from them in the next couple of weeks. And as I said, I'm in dialogue with the person at the Upper Providence EAC. And she said she's up for it, but she just needed spring distribution. So I don't know what you think the next step is. Well, the other reason I want to bring this up now is because if it does involve, which it needs to, buy-in from trails or parks and rec or shade tree, they all need to raise this at their respective meetings and vote on.
Yeah,
this.
I think it'd be appropriate, particularly for shade tree to, get on and hopefully take the lead on this because it is a shade tree. I think it would fall under shade tree mostly. But the other piece would be when we have our May chair and vice chair meeting. That's a good time for it to be discussed and brought up as a collaboration type of project.
Great. Okay, thank you. So we have 7 minutes left. We're going to try to get done.
I think we go to 7 these days.
The meeting here at 7, you could probably go to 6:45, but that
But I think a lot of the rest of the stuff we can get through quickly. Okay, so 9.5 Drexel Lodge Park environmental education signs. This is something that came up when I was in dialogue with Karen Wilwall, the watershed education coordinator at Delaware County Conservation District. And we discussed the fact that several years ago, the EAC applied for and received a $500 mini grant to develop and post educational signs at Drexel Lodge. Got signatures and plans and everything. It just never was implemented. But she confirmed that the money is still there. And if we want to go ahead and produce those signs and put them up, we've got it. So we can dust that off and get those in. And I'll probably run those by everybody again. I can send them out to the folks here, send them to George again, refresh everybody's memory. And then we can, after we get through Earth Day and the rain gardens, we can go with that. It was to focus on the different environmental features that the township has put in there, like the riparian buffer along the water, the rain garden up by the gazebo, or the pavilion, the wildflower meadow between the street, the road and the gazebo, the no mow or low mow area along the pine trees, because there are a lot of features there. The trees up by the road, and they're all significant. They're all intentional. But I think when people look at it, they don't realize that it was thought and intent behind that. And these would just be little, like traffic size metal signs on the stake for durability and simplicity. Okay, number 10, old business, native plant swap and giveaway. Janet.
That's happening Saturday, Earth Day, at the Paper Mill House. And I am happy to announce that the Horticultural Society and Newtown Square and Bloom have volunteered to help pay for the plants that I ordered on my credit card to give away. And these are native plants. They're 50 plug. I think they're going to be about this size. And one of the things we have to do when we plant these native plants is to plant in clusters. So I'm giving each person who comes and asks for a plant three of the same kind, so that they can plant them in clusters. And we will have 200 plants to give away. And we'll call out some of them to plant at the paper mill house. And here we need to refresh some of the ones for here. But I'm looking forward to this. There will be activity. There will be a beekeeper at this event through the historical society, and Kathy Cavalier really put together a very nice graphic to show all the things that are happening. So we may have
Great.
to do it between raindrops, but we like rain.
It'll be a great event. Thank you,
Thank you.
Janet. 10.2 Arbor Day. This is a Shade Tree Commission led event. They are going to be planting just about 10 or 15 trees on Saturday, April 29th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. They're looking for volunteers to join them at the Goshen Walking Trail behind the John West House. And we're going to be supporting them on that. They're taking the lead, and Trails and Greenways will also be there as it's planting alongside a trail. So come join us. Plant a tree. 10.3, there's a bird walk. You already mentioned this?
Not
Oh,
today.
I
Previously, that's
can't
why
keep
it's
track
under
of all these
old
walks.
business, but
Okay.
that'll take place on April the 6th at Garrett Williamson.
Basics.
May the 6th, thank you. And Mike McGraw will be leading it with some of his friends. It's live now for, I've asked Rose to put it on the calendar, the link on the calendar, as well as on our Facebook page. So hopefully it'll be filled. There are enough for 80 people.
I think last year it was sold out.
Yes, right.
And Mike McGraw is fabulous,
Yes.
so knowledgeable.
And I know Lewis has signed up.
And it's peak migration season, so you'll see, hopefully, or
Yes.
hear a lot of migrating birds. Okay, 10.4, we have two EAC community outreach tables for events coming up. One is going to be on May 6th at the Parks and Rec Family Fun Day at the Train Museum at Drexel Lodge Park, and kids concert from 10 to 4. We are hopefully having an educational table at that event. Typically what we do is like 2-hour shifts. So if people like 10 to 12, 12 to 2, 2 to 4, I can circulate an email after today and people can volunteer, take a shift.
I can do the afternoon.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a
Holy Community Day.
Okay, that's an important event. We would not want you to miss that. Okay. Great. And then on, there's going to be Circle at a Sundown event, which was so popular a couple years ago. There's going to be another, that's going to be another event on Sunday evening from 5 to 8:30. And we've been asked specifically by Linda McIsaac to have a table, to have an interesting hands-on table. Something hands-on like yours. He doesn't want us just handing out literature. So we've got to come up with an idea for that, an interactive game or idea.
Well, I've been sitting in on this committee, so I've kind of already committed myself to be part of this, and I will drag my Birdtown stuff over, and we'll come up with some activity that
Okay.
be interesting for the kids.
I will help you.
Thanks.
It's a fun evening. Okay, great. Okay. Okay. Okay, 10.5. Willistown Conservation Lawn to Meadow Conversion Program. Janet.
Yes. Willistown Conservation Trust has received a large grant from its CCNR, isn't it? Yes, I think the initials kind of are confusing. To help residents in communities convert their lawns into meadows and they are going to be responsible for coming out and doing the conversion with the resident. The resident then, after it is in place, will be responsible for that, for the meadow. So Willistown will not oversee it after they've helped to put it in. We consider this an opportunity to really help to foster pollinators in our yards. So when we get down to the next one, we'll address that. But this is a great opportunity. I've spoken with Andrew Fitzpatrick, who is running this program for Willistown Trust. I crossed my fingers when I said, "Can Newtown Square residents be part of this?" And he said, "Yes, absolutely." And we're looking also to work with HOAs. So this is something that I've spoken to him twice. I asked him, could I bring this up at today's meeting? And he said, yes, I could. So we'll follow up on this.
Great. And to put that in context, I already mentioned the Chesapeake Bay already. But Chesapeake Bay is in trouble, and they are not meeting their goals for water cleanliness. So last year, the state of Pennsylvania launched another initiative which relates to this, which they are really pushing. And their goal is to convert 10,000 acres of land in the state away from either lawn or I think agriculture, to either they want to convert 5,000 acres like from lawn to meadow, and another 5,000 to like forest, reforest it. And that's where this is coming from. And the state is putting a lot of money towards this. There are webinars that they've been about this program and the money they're putting towards it. And they've hired staffing people at regions all across the state. So there's money, there's people, there's programs. And that's part of how Willistown got this money. And the fact is Willistown is kind of like an intermediary where the state doesn't have the bandwidth to deal with all these little landowners. So they're giving the grants to Willistown, organizations like that, and saying, okay, Willistown, now you feet on the ground, boots on the ground, you go out to homeowners and HOAs and implement this. So we think this is a great opportunity, not only for pollinators but for native plants, but also, Steve, I could see it helping with MS4, you know. So we think this is a great opportunity.
Yep.
But moving on to 10.6, we cannot take advantage of this fully under our current ordinance. And this is your concern, because you said you thought the weed ordinance as it is stated now does not permit or provide for that.
Yes. So my understanding, I think you have all sent me actually a document this week. And I have had a brief chance to look at it. I've actually been in a conference this week on innovation in government. And so a lot of interesting things out there. But this actually would fit in that role, I think, and a sustainability. So I will spend a little bit more time with this and get a review. I can put it on the agenda for Monday night, but I'm not going to be there Monday night. So I think that the best thing would be to be the first meeting in May, if that's okay. And I know we want to move quickly, but I don't want to move so quickly that it doesn't get the attention that it deserves.
Right. No, that's great. Steve, I know it's probably more lengthy than you expected. But Janet and I spent a lot of time going back and forth on this. And not knowing exactly what your concerns exactly were or what the township's concerns were. We studied a lot of ordinances from different states, municipalities, and they take a lot of different approaches.
Yep.
Not only to how they're drafted and where they're put in the code, but their approach and their provisions. So, if we're off base, we can come at it a different way, but we try to provide some rationale and context for it.
Right, and I think that a lot of this is really why we need to do this. So
Yep.
if you read through that, not everybody is deeply involved as we are here. But if they were aware of this, they would be much more accepting of it. So I
Yeah.
think that was
I-
another one of our.
Yeah, I think no matter what we do on this, and how we move forward, I think that how we communicate it
Yeah.
is going to be key. And so, it won't be as simple as just saying we passed the ordinance. I think
Absolutely.
that, it'll probably be one of those things like, we're doing a big stormwater emphasis this year in our newsletter. Maybe this becomes the emphasis for the
Yeah.
entire year in our newsletter, where every time it's before somebody, they see it and it's like, oh yeah, there's a reason why we're looking at some of these kind of things. And, to be honest with you, this is one of those tough ones, because though some people are really happy with that look, there's other people who find that look very offensive. And so you've got to figure out how to do this in such a way that it allows the individual their piece, but at the same time,
Supports our sustainability.
yes. And so there's going to have to be some kind of balance in this. And I think that's exactly what you're trying to do here. And so, like I said, I haven't had a chance to spend a lot of time with it. I will try to do that. If I have concerns, I'll get it back to you. But my intent would be to get it before the board quickly.
Yeah, and it's-
Move it forward.
And Steve, if we need to revise it, rewrite it before it goes to the board, I want to go to them with something that we're really comfortable with. We also send it to Andy.
Yes.
Yeah.
We really want to make sure that it's
Yeah.
enforceable.
Yeah.
As I said to Janet, Andy's got to be able to walk up to someone's lawn and say, yes, no,
Yeah,
does this make it or not?
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
10.7, the land development form. Is this form the same form that we saw before, or has it been changed at all? Because I know I had a number of comments on it. I sent back a lot of comments on it.
well, I don't think anything's changed.
Okay,
If you want to make changes, as your board, and you want to make changes back, we'll take those and put them back into something. I just try to put something that you can fill out in the meeting and basically get your information. Because I know that you have a very short window. Like if you have to put something together by Friday afternoon, it's Thursday evening. And so the idea was, basically the action item the planning commission does is something that they fill in that night. It says, these are the 3 things or 5 things that we're worried about, and then it's kind of melded into a short statement. And their memo to the board usually is about a paragraph. And so, says these are the things we think, and we recommend these waivers, or we think that these conditions ought to be in place as part of that, or these are the waivers we don't
Yep.
recommend.
Yep.
And so that's what was the idea of this.
Mhm.
If you want to come up with something different, there's no pride in authorship.
Yeah.
It was just really something to keep you a basis of, here are the things that we're looking at. And if you want to look at a few other things, that's great. But these were the things I said that were EAC related
Mhm.
kind of things, and trying to stay kind of in a lane that you guys focus on.
Yeah.
But there's nothing here that is so sad that if you want to make something different, I would like to try to have your memo be very similar to the type of memo that the Trails and Greenways doing that the.
Makes sense.
Can we see what theirs looks like?
Well, all of them are basically like this.
Okay.
Because when I was looking at this, and I actually shared it with Trish too, she had a number of comments. And I know we have to wrap up soon, but the thing that I found lacking here was a lot of our comment letters are informational. They're to provide context, like the fact that the state has set these goals of 10 million, or, what did I say, 10,000 acres. Because
But I think the key that I want to make sure that there's a difference. Some things we will drive from a community level and say, we're going to make changes to our ordinance. But when you're reviewing land development, time which it comes in, it's functioning under the ordinances that we have today. And if the state says they want 10,000 acres to be under meadow, I mean, you might say, would you consider, but it is, I mean.
But I guess where I'm saying is there are some places where there can be like a waiver or a variance or something like that. And if we're trying to advise the planning board, like, please do not grant that waiver
Sure.
to provide context. This is the context of why we would advocate. Yes, I know the rules are the rules, but there is sometimes latitude where the planning board can grant exceptions or things like that. And that I think it helps them to understand the context.
Yeah, let me say this, if you want to put more information in, and what I would try to do is develop something that somebody looks at on probably the front of a page, and they get to know what it is that you think. Here's what I will tell you, and I
Nobody reads my comment letters.
no, well, but and I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is if the comment letter's 3 pages long, you probably have less impact than if you can figure out how to say it in one. And here's what I'll tell you. I know what I put together for packets and what the reality is, I look at some of this and I'm saying, this is a review for one of these land developments. And I'm saying, there's no way anybody's reading all that, right? So when you get to your comment letter, I think the benefit is when you can put it into such a way that it's, 2, 3, if you have to go to 4 paragraphs, go to 4 paragraphs kind of thing. But if you can put it in such a way that we support this or we don't support this, and here's what it is that we don't support and where it doesn't fit in our ordinance. And then if you want to give some background information, attach it to it and somebody can go read why we believe that, see this for why we hold that. But the stand that you're taking as a group, I would try to keep it very short.
So for example, for the 2 comment letters for tomorrow, you're saying I should use this.
I'm saying that it's a format that you should use versus trying to write something think about it as something that they
We'll
can.
give it a try. Give it a try.
So this
I'm
is
not saying
almost
don't attach another reading and say, see this for further detail.
This is like the bullet.
This is like the bullet points. It doesn't have to be this, but it should be something similar that gets to the point that somebody looks at it and goes, I see why they think this is good or not good. And if you want to talk about what the state's initiatives are, put that in, but put it in as an addendum kind of a thing.
Okay.
That's my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. 10.8, we have a rain garden site prep Sunday, May 7th. Afternoon, 1 to 4. All are welcome to help. Going to be weeding and mulching. On the following Saturday, May 13th, we're having a rain garden replanting, planting hundreds of small plugs in the rain garden here and up in the Little League field. Item 11, public comment. Items for next agenda.
I was hoping we could have just a brief report from Dane. Tell us how the Sustainability Coalition is going.
Be happy to.
Okay.
Next meeting, right?
Or in a minute now.
No, I think we're over, yeah. I'll have a good report for next, we have, a lot of good progress and good feedback from the community and so,
Great.
yeah.
Good. We'll make sure to put that.
We got a
early.
new sign here too as well. So,
We'll put that early on the agenda.
sounds good, yeah.
Okay, thanks, everybody.